The Sports Renegades podcast on SportstownChicago.com.
Never been afraid to talk about anything. Renegade. Never been afraid to say what's on my mind at any given time of day, cause I'm a renegade. Never been afraid to holler about anything.
All right, welcome into the Sports Renegades here on SportstownChicago.com. I'm Ryan Stuprich.
And I'm Ryan Risky.
And
you just heard a South Bend Cubs win.
Yes, they swept the doubleheader, so that's very exciting. I am Ryan Stuprich.
And I'm Ryan Risky. And today, the Cubs made a big trade, acquiring Aroldis Chapman from the New York Yankees in exchange for top prospect Gleyber Torres, another top prospect in Billy McKinney, along with veteran pitcher Adam Warren and single-A outfielder Rashad Crawford. Now, essentially, the whole Jeff Samardzija for Hamill trade, they essentially sent those two to Oakland, and in return got Russell and Chapman. And plus getting Hamill back is kind of now how it's looking. Right.
So, I mean, the move for me, I think it's a good move because you know like what they're doing. They're trying to solidify the bullpen. It helps that he's really good. Obviously, he can throw up to like 105 miles an hour, which is ridiculous. And as far as the pieces that you gave up, we all know how good Torres is. I think he's like a top 15 prospect and the top Cubs prospect, like according to certain websites and everything. But there's no room for him necessarily. So I think it's the right move. And then McKinney, another guy who was drafted by Oakland, I think.
Yes, and they got him in the Addison Russell trade. He's an outfielder.
Right. And again, there's no specific need for an outfielder. So I mean, it makes sense when you think about it.
Right, I mean, and eventually they're going to have to trade some talent in order to get pitching, and as Theo Epstein said in his interview today, if not now, when?
Right, exactly.
You're going to have to trade some of these guys, and one thing that makes the good teams great is when you have certain players at positions, at the major league level, and then you have others in the minor league system, and you have to decide who's the guy that you want. And obviously the Cubs would choose Addison Russell over any other shortstop in the organization. And then you trade Gleyber Torres for Aroldis Chapman. Hopefully the Cubs can work out an extension with him at the end of the season. I know there was a lot of talks about them potentially working on an extension last night. I mean, to me, that just didn't make sense. Why would Chapman sign an extension when he's 2 months away from free agency?
Yeah, I can see why he didn't want to do that. And, I mean, either way, the Cubs are going to be trying to extend him anyway after the season. They're going to try to re-sign him, and he could be making the most money out of any reliever ever, which is quite possible, especially because there's going to be a lot of other teams involved.
And
trying to get him, too.
And he's still young. I think he'll be 28 next year. I believe 28 or 29.
He's definitely not 30 yet, so that helps, too.
I mean, he's a flamethrower.
He's right in the middle of his prime.
And he's been good every year. I mean, he's been like lights out every year. And I think I read that the Cardinals have not scored a run off of Chapman since 2013, which was a span of 25 games that Chapman had pitched in against them.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty crazy, especially when you consider, I mean, most of those games were against, were when the Cardinals are really good and they're playing the bad Reds. And
right, I mean, and
Chapman's just able to shut him down.
And the Reds were good a couple of those years, and I mean, this makes the whole bullpen much stronger because at some point in the playoffs, I had tweeted this out a couple times, if you're playing the Nationals, you're going to need someone that can get out Bryce Harper and Daniel Murphy.
Right,
If you play the Giants, someone's going to have to get out Brandon Belt and Brandon Crawford. If you play the Dodgers, someone's going to have to get out Corey Seager, Adrian Gonzalez, and Jock Peterson. And while the addition of Mike Montgomery was great, you definitely feel much better about the bullpen now with Aroldis Chapman in. And you know that he could get those guys out late in the games because they're not going to be playing in those blowouts come playoff time. They're going to be in some close games, and now you can have Rondon and Strop as your two main setup men. Right now, and then when Cahill comes back, you'll have him and Grimm and Travis Wood, who's another good lefty. And as I said, you can never have too many lefties because there's going to be some good lefty hitters that they're going to need to get out late in games, and you might only need Mike Montgomery or Travis Wood to face one batter. You might bring him in to face Harper. and that'll be it because you'll still have Montgomery and Chapman still waiting to enter the game.
Yeah, that's all very true. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, I mean, obviously we know about Aroldis Chapman and his domestic issue that he had, I think, during the offseason or whatever, or maybe it was at the beginning of the season when he was suspended for 30 games or for 30 days or whatever. I mean, of course, a lot of Cubs fans think that, that this wasn't a good move just because of that, because, it's hard to root for the guy or whatever. But you sort of have to take the good with the bad. I mean, the positive is, he's like the best reliever in the game. And, the negative is I think we can overcome and overlook the fact that he's had some issues in the past. Obviously, hopefully, nothing happens again. And, it was something with domestic violence or something. He was like waving around a gun, too, or something. So not good, but, if anybody can calm him down and make sure that doesn't happen again, it's Joe Maddon and the Cubs.
Now, and another thing is with those people that don't like the move because of that, are you really going to be complaining if he's on the mound recording the final out of the World Series?
No, absolutely not.
See, that's what matters. And, Theo and Jed and Tom Ricketts all went to a thorough discussion on whether they should acquire him or not, and they even believe that one of the things in negotiations, one of the conditions was that they had to talk to Chapman to make sure that he had calmed down and nothing like this would ever happen again, and explain to him what it meant to be a Cub.
Right.
And right now, that just strengthens your whole bullpen. Because Hector Rondon is lights out. And I just really hope that it's not one like the scenario with the Nationals last year where Drew Storen gets pissed off because they trade for Jonathan Papelbon and he gets bumped from the closer's role.
I don't think Rondon will be upset.
I know Rondon. I think Jesse Rogers that talked to Rondon today, and he said that all that matters is winning games.
Yeah, well, that's the mentality all these Cubs players have, which is also great, obviously. There's no egos like there was, in 2003, even 2007, 2008.
Right, and right now the bullpen just looks so much better because Richard is gone. They'll have the three. They don't need four lefties.
I love how they keep trying to give him chances. That he just squanders every single opportunity that they give him.
He was good last year, except they needed another good lefty. And, now your three lefties, Wood, Mike Montgomery, who you got.
And Cahill is much better than Clayton Richard.
Yeah, who you got in the trade from the Mariners, and then Aroldis Chapman from the left side. And then you'll still have Grimm, Cahill, Strop, Rondon from the right side. And then if they elect to keep another pitcher, they could still have a guy like Joe Nathan, C.J. Edwards. I assume they'll carry 13 pitchers until September because it's when Cahill is back and healthy, it's going to be tough to choose who to send down or who won't be with the team, which in that discussion would end up coming between Edwards, Grimm, and Joe Nathan. And just for service time purposes and having options, Edwards would probably be the guy that gets sent down, even though he's doing the best of all of them. And even though Justin Grimm has been very good since the second half started, he looks like the old Justin Grimm. And Joe Nathan was good in his debut the other day, except I don't know if they would be willing to send him down,
It's hard to trust the guy who's 40.
Right. It's tough to, when you're seeing all these people writing articles like bullpen help is on the way. It's like he's coming off of Tommy John surgery. He hasn't pitched since last April. He's 41. He's probably got little to no velocity left. They already had the experiment earlier this year, the 40-year-old Joel Peralta, and he only lasted a few games.
Right, and then remember last year when they had Rafael Soriano, and we all thought he'd be okay, and he was bad too.
Yeah, he was so bad he only stuck for a couple weeks. I remember him and James Russell Russell got designated for assignment around the same time.
James Russell overstayed his welcome, like 3 years too long. It seems like anyway, because he was there for a long time. He was with the Cubs. It's just it's obviously the right move. And, all the other, all the personal stuff with Chapman, that's all going to go away when the Cubs continue to win, and then when they make it through the postseason. It's not necessarily a big issue, if they keep winning. And, he served his time, which was good. If it happens again, obviously there's a problem. But, if it doesn't happen again, I say, let's try to forget about it. Let's try to focus on the team, focus on the task at hand.
And this is just one of those things, like, if you want to extend him, this is just kind of the thing where you're going to evaluate him as the season goes on, and then you'll decide what you want to do.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. As far as the offense is concerned, we know that they don't necessarily need any offensive help, and just going back, from the start of the second half, the starting pitching hasn't really let them down, which is great.
Other than Lester yesterday. That might have been it was just really hot and he was having trouble gripping the ball, which he probably won't have that issue with the heat in October.
Right, and then Lackey threw a quality start, but he didn't pitch very well.
No, he wasn't sharp. It's like with Lackey, it seems like a lot of games, recently he hasn't been able to keep his stamina late in games. Like I noticed in the first inning of a lot of his starts, he's hitting the 90, 93 a lot with his fastball first couple innings, and then once you get to like the fourth or fifth inning, it's down to 90. So he hasn't really found a way, or he hasn't been able to keep that velocity or the stamina deeper into the start, which means he might just have to throw the fastball a little softer earlier in the game because you can't have your arm worn out after a couple innings.
True. And then, of course, at the start of the second half, Anthony Rizzo's been completely on fire. It's ridiculous how good he's been, and he had that clutch hit yesterday, which was so fun to watch.
Like, how many clutch hits has he had in the second half? He had the 2 booming home runs off of Bartolo Colon. He had a 3-run homer off of a changeup off of Steven Matz, and that Dexter Fowler home run that he hit on Friday.
That was awesome.
That was the first home run in the second half by a Cub player not named Anthony Rizzo.
Wow.
They didn't hit any home runs against the Rangers, and Rizzo hit 3 against the Mets, and then Fowler hit 1.
Right.
You could tell how loud it was when Rizzo hit that double yesterday.
It was all Cubs fans in Milwaukee. It was great.
It reminded me of last year in the July series at Miller Park. This is the week right after they got no hit. The offense hadn't been doing anything.
That's when they really started to turn around.
Losing 2-0 in the top of the 8th inning. Rizzo comes up with 2 on, facing Will Smith, and hits a 3-run homer. And I was there, and I just remember how loud the place got when he hit that booming home run into the upper deck, and that was kind of when the big winning started. Bryant hit the walk-off home run earlier in that week.
Against Colorado.
John Axford on Colorado, except, that home run that Rizzo hit really was one of the key moments during the season, especially to get that big run going, because I remember...
Yeah, we kind of never looked back after that.
Right, because I remember Craig Counsell brought in Will Smith to face Rizzo. He hits a 3-run homer to give him a 3-2 lead. And, and the rest was history there. And then the funny thing is that double that Rizzo just hit on Sunday, that was also off of Will Smith.
Right. And he was mad after that game, too. Did you see him in the dugout? He was throwing stuff around and breaking stuff.
I think he's tired of facing Rizzo. It seems like whenever he comes in to face Rizzo, Rizzo's doing something, which, that's just what happens when you bring in a lefty. That's just part of the risk when you bring in a lefty to face Rizzo. It's really 50-50 that he's going to get him out or Rizzo's going to do something big. And, I can't tell you the amount of times that Rizzo has come up huge late in a game when an opposing manager brings in a lefty to face him. Last month against the Nationals when Dusty Baker brought in Oliver Perez to face Rizzo, and he hit that 2-run homer in the 9th inning on the Sunday game against the Nationals. Mm-hmm. The Cubs ended up losing that game in like 14 innings or something. Except, that just shows, when you bring in that lefty to face Rizzo, you really don't know what's going to be happening.
The Sports Renegades podcast on SportsTownChicago.com.